Welcome. Welcome to Occam's Razor. This is Blazing Cat Fur Fridays, where we do a cold read through the best news aggregate for people who think just like me. I'd like to thank BCF for posting these live streams and for his tireless commitment to publishing a site for almost 20 years now. And did you know he has a news feed? Yes, he does. For when you just can't wait for the next BCF post to tell you what's going on in this crazy world. And if you'd like to help this veteran out, please follow me on Rumble so I can achieve the minimum follower threshold for the Rumble Career Program. I'm also on CommuTube, also known as YouTube, with backup channels. And while you're there, please feel free to comment. I'd love to read what you folks have to say. All right, so let's go. Let's do a quick refresh on his site. And oh, very nice. Look who it is. It is moi. Now, next, Carney's nation building projects will bill passes Senate, not without indigenous pushback. The Senate passed Prime Minister Mark Carney's landmark nation building projects bill unnamed Thursday, giving the federal government extraordinary new powers to fast track initiatives that have the potential to boost the economy as Canada grapples with U.S. trade war. Potential to boost every single socialist plan to spend more money on itself to boost its own economy has always ended up in failure. Canada is slowly turning into Yugoslavia. Carney's cabinet can now streamline the approvals process by allowing some projects to bypass provisions of federal laws like the Impact Assessment Act, which has long been criticized as a hindrance to getting things approved in a timely manner. Impact Assessment Act. Was that not one of the acts that was on the list that they had to adhere to that they came back with changes from the committee? I don't know now. I'd have to go back and look into that. Either way, as much as they say they're going to increase projects across Canada and streamline and get them happening, we'll see what actually happens because know them by what they do. Liberals have never built anything. Everything that they've been involved with has only meddled and made it more cumbersome. Proof is in the pudding. They've been nothing but a disaster so far. I have no expectations that this will change. Church of England prepares for serious war involving UK. Oh God, bankers are still pushing this BS narrative, and now they want to start drafting people into their woke military. The Church of England is readying for major war by drawing up plans to support the nation during a serious conflict involving the UK and to make it simpler to appoint military chaplains. The Right Reverend Hugh Nelson, the Bishop to the Armed Forces, said on Monday, I've been hearing as I've traveled around military establishments and spoken to Armed Forces personnel over the past 2 years at least of rising concern about the threat of a very, very serious conflict, including conflicts that involve the UK. And here, BCF says, I think they had better prepare for civil war. Perhaps they are. It strikes me that the real purpose of DEI and the emasculation of the armed forces is not just to discourage recruitment from their traditional talent pool of young white males, to cultivate a force with as little connection or loyalty to Canada as possible, one much more easily persuaded to shoot citizens as the need arises. Indeed, I've covered this in the past where even the armed forces has reduced the recruiting um, threshold when they will allow people with mental issues to join. So, who better to manipulate to engage and offer violence to your own citizens as your own troops, other than somebody that you can easily manipulate? Support for Western separatism nearing levels of 1980s Quebec, new study. Oh, I see separatism now rearing its ugly head. Again, just like when I was in high school, in the late 70s and early 80s when we had all the separatism happening back then. And we were taking this in high school at the time. I had a really good history teacher. He was awesome. He used to do all these little slideshows and stuff. And he was the one that introduced us to Western separatism. Hardly even touched in the press at the times. Ah, what knowledge I gained from that teacher. The Western separatist movement is reaching levels of support seen during the initial surge of Quebec's independence movement in the 1980s, says a new study from the Aristotle Foundation for Public Policy. The report released on June 26 noted that while support for Western separatism is still not as high as Quebec, the peak of its sovereignty movement, support for Western provinces leaving Canada continues to grow. Well, yeah, I mean, every single thing that the liberals are doing enriches themselves and their friends at the expense of Canadians. And then when you ask them questions, they refuse to answer you anything or be accountable. Still waiting for a budget, by the way. A boy named Good Samaritan has vehicle stolen by driver he was helping. While he may not be Mr. Big, it is any wonder he turned his to a life of crime. Okay, I gotta click on this story. Let's open the link. And oh, it's a Sudbury Star story. A Manitoulin detachment of the OPP said in a release that officers responded to a report of a stolen vehicle June 20th at 4 a.m. 4 a.m. You're either going to work pretty early or you're coming back from somewhere pretty late. Police said the victim reported that they had come across a single vehicle rollover collision on Highway 17. Oh, yeah. When the passers-by stopped to offer their help, their vehicle was stolen by the driver involved in a collision. As a result, the investigation officers located the stolen vehicle at a parking lot in Macaro, and the driver was arrested. There were no injuries as a result of the collision. Dong Huang, 23, from Scarborough, was charged with the theft of a motor vehicle, driving while prohibited, improper use of a credit card, possession of property obtained by crime over $5,000. Well, a boy named. All right. When you vote wrong, EU allies push to overturn Polish elections. Of course, we've seen this in Romania. We've seen them. They always tried this in Italy. We know they're not happy with Hungary because Hungary's closed its own borders and being protecting its citizens. And if I don't know if you guys have seen the news in Poland, I mean, it's past year they've been starting to flood their country with immigrants, and the locals are not having it. And even at the municipal and county or provincial level, whatever their version of that is, parish, whatever, I don't know, where they push back against the federal government saying, ha, we're not paying for housing for all these illegals that you're bringing in, that you put into law that we have to do this. So they said, fine, no problem. We did put it into law, which means we will deny you your transfer funds from the federal government for education. So no education for your kids in your county. Yeah, that's how these Marxists do it, these cultural Marxists. They have their fingers in everything, and they are inundating Western civilization with people to destroy the culture within the West so that they can just turn everyone into debt slaves. Poland's recent presidential election is now at risk of being overturned after the conservative candidate Karol Nawrocki won a surprise victory against the liberal favorite, backed by the opposition Law and Justice Party, PIS party. It's almost as unfortunate an acronym as MILF for the Moro Islamic Liberation Front in Philippines. Nawrocki defeated the liberal mayor of Warsaw, Rafał Zaslowski, a close ally of Prime Minister Donald Tusk and his Brussels-aligned communist globalist coalition. But instead of acceptance, Naraki's win has triggered a wave of resistance. Unlike in other EU countries where electoral irregularities are tolerated if the correct candidates win, Poland now faces the prospect of having the vote annulled altogether. The Supreme Court has announced that it will issue a verdict on the election validity on July 1st after receiving more than 50,000 complaints. Well, we'll see if democracy holds fast in Poland after only a few short decades since they extricated themselves from the Soviet Union. Canadian dies in ICE jail after being arrested for staying in country illegally. A Canadian immigrant has died in the custody of ICE while awaiting removal from the US. Johnny Novello, 49, died on Monday afternoon while in custody in Miami, Florida. His cause of death is under investigation. Novello was undergoing removal proceedings when he was found unresponsive. Medical staff attempted to resuscitate him, but he was pronounced dead shortly after. Right. So he had been in the U.S. illegally and had already been in jail for drug trafficking. And all these things they leave out of the mainstream media when all they do is say, Canadian dies in ICE custody. And then they leave everything else out. And then they never really fix that story the following day, which they won't. They won't do any cause up on it because they've already done their damage now, right? Because this is the propaganda that they need to put forward. Just this part right here. Guys in jail. All right. Little Carney in a rush to get nowhere. Indeed. Well, he's in a rush to make sure that he and his friends are all financially taken care of. Having read Values, the pre electoral philosophical musings of Prime Minister Carney, I was keen to read his first stab at legislating. I will cut to the chase. His ambiguous style of writing about values is reflected in his ambiguous style of writing about interprovincial trade and labor and large project promotion bill in Bill C5, Act to enact the Free Trade and Labor Mobility Act in Canada, Act and Building Canada Act. That's a mouthful. My prediction is that nothing will be changed by his legislation and that perhaps is by design. Of course, it's by design. A lot of talk, a lot of spending, a lot of plans, right? A lot of things moving in motion, a lot of words that say nothing. Always a lot of cash going out, right? And then, oh, then they'll throw a few little pittances. Oh, we'll increase the funding here. We'll increase the funding. They'll make a lot of announcements. Nothing will get done. Other than more people getting arrested, more people being thrown in jail, more people's rights being taken away, more people being accused of spreading misinformation. Oh, yes, that's on the horizon. They're coming after everybody soon. Anyone that points out they are complete failures will be misinformation. GOP senators present evidence. China bankrolls environmentalist lawsuits to cripple U.S. power. Very litigious in the states. But Trump has been winning in the courts over and over again. Senators met yesterday for a subcommittee hearing to discuss claims that the Chinese Communist Party, foreign donors, and leftist legal activism are behind a systemic campaign to dismantle American energy dominance. Of course, communists will use every tool at their disposal to undermine their enemy. Throughout the hearing, Chairman Ted Cruz from Texas emphasized how foreign funding and activist legislation are undermining U.S. energy infrastructure, posing a national security threat. His four Democrat colleagues repeatedly dismissed the concerns as a conspiracy theory, pshaw, instead of focusing on energy costs and global warming. Global warming. Oh, God. It's cooler today on planet Earth than it was during the Roman warm period. And the Roman warm period was cooler than the prior warm period, about, was it 1200 years before that. So slowly and steadily, the global temperatures are dropping precipitously. And overall, this planet has been a frozen ice ball longer than it has been thought, where whatever life occurs on this planet has a very, very short window. But of course, we live such a short lifespan, and it seems the majority of the people on the far left are incapable of thinking beyond tomorrow, beyond their own emotional feelings about everything. They still believe in the scam, in spite of the geological evidence that proves otherwise. Oh, because they all base their theories on the fraudulent IPCC data, the same data that Canada uses to push its global scam. And even when it's proven that Canada absorbs more carbon just by its huge landmass, we're at the point where carbon credit positive, we still need to suffer more. We still need to suffer more to save the planet while enriching Carney and his friends. FBI investigating Cynthia Gonzalez, vice mayor of Uday, California, who called for gang members to protect their turf. More Democrat violation of the law. The comments made by Vice Mayor Kuday, California Cynthia Gonzalez, are despicable. She calls for criminal gangs, including the vicious 18th Street Gang, commit violence against brave ICE law enforcement. Well, let's see what she says. Turn on her sound here.
Not for nothing, but I want to know where all the cholos are at in Los Angeles. 18th Street, Florencia. Where's the leadership at? Because you guys are all about territory, and this is 18th Street, and this is Florencia. You guys tag everything up, claiming hood. And now that your hood's being invaded by the biggest gang there is, there ain't a peep out of you. It's everyone else who's not about the gang life that's out there protesting and speaking up. We're out there like fighting our turf, protecting our people. And like, where you at? Bien calladitos, todos los chulitos. I'm like, Dude, they're running amok all up in on your streets, on your streets and in your city. And Pete, when the big gang guns come in, nothing but like quiet, and we're out here, the regular ones that have never been jumped in, out here calling things out, trying to organize people, trying to do the thing. So don't be trying to claim no block, no nothing. If you're not showing up right now, trying to like help out and organize. I don't want to hear a peep out of you once they're gone, trying to claim that this is my block. This was not your block. You weren't even here helping out. So whoever's the leadership over there, just fucking get your members in order. Not for nothing.
Well, I guess there's crazy mayors everywhere. I mean, Canada has their fair share. Mayor Chow in Toronto, Mayor Judy Gundick, Calgary, everywhere there are crazy mayors. Hey, you have to wonder about the mayor of Montreal as well. Why are they're not even going to celebrate Canada Day this year? That's the kind of mayor they have in Montreal. The Ukrainian immigrant got loans from Canada and Ontario to start a meat plant here. Now Ottawa says he's inadmissible. Everything they touch is just garbage. Nobody does their background. It's free money for them. Ah, I screw up. It's not my money. I won't pay a penalty. In 2019, Alexander Zarabelnin came to Canada from Ukraine to work uh, on a work permit and opened a meat processing plant in North Bay with the financial backing of the Canadian and Ontario governments. The entrepreneur has spent more than 6 years in the country, receiving multiple renewals of his visas and work authorization. But now immigration officials have told him that he and his family should be barred from Canada because he had previously worked for the main Ukrainian security agency. Really, this from the same government that is allowing IRGCC terrorist Iranian people into the country without a care in the world. This from the same federal government that has allowed mass immigration, unvetted mass immigration of God knows how many other terrorists and criminals that have come in because you cannot vet people if your staff can only afford 1.5 seconds per person for the amount of people they let through. That's how much time was actually available for them to just look at. They didn't even look at the files. They just process. Oh, come on, guys, let's get in here. Let's go. So got all these people in, and but this guy who's actually creating jobs, he's got to go. Yeah. And you tell me the liberals are now doing everything possible within their power, to completely dismantle Canada. We must heed the warning of Spain's net zero blackouts. Oh, yeah, yeah. This is what happens when green scams get control of your country. At 12:30 p.m. on Monday, 28 April, Spain and Portugal were plunged into blackouts. Modern life ground to a halt thanks to one of the worst power outages in European history. Electricity was not fully restored across Spain until 10 hours later. In the early hours of Tuesday morning, the outages lasted up to 18 hours in some regions. Even when the grid came back online, it was still sufficient to make calls or access the internet in parts of central Spain. Yes, and Canada, uh, get ready. You're going to be heading towards a lot of brownouts and blackouts yourself because liberals are going to get involved in ensuring that we get rid of energy providers that actually provide energy into other energy providers that only, mostly provide energy sometimes, perhaps with no backup because, liberals are going to get rid of those backups because global warming. Carmelo Anthony's fixer wants more money to continue fighting white supremacy. There is now an official murder charge on the table of Carmelo Anthony, the young black delinquent who admitted to stabbing Austin Metcalf to death at a Texas track meet early this spring. Though he swore it was self-defense. Why now? Well, there was a major development. The prosecution recently obtained video footage of the fatal stabbing and considered that there have been no leaks of the recording. I can only assume the evidence is beyond damning for Anthony. Some sources allege that the video shows the stabbing was entirely unprovoked, which contradicts earlier rumors that Metcalf had shoved Anthony after Anthony refused to exit the athlete tent for school he didn't attend. Well, there's one thing I can say for sure is that one of the side effects of cultural Marxism and Hegelian deconstructionism of our Western values, Part of that, of course, is not enforcing the law sufficiently and making people adhere to ethics and values that we used to have in the West. Is you get a downfall of society and life becomes next to worthless because the government has been treating life pretty well worthlessly. Here in Canada, anyway, I know this is a story in the States. It's the same affectation socially. People just don't care because they're all being taught to be narcissists and not care about their neighbor. Not taught love and compassion, they're only taught that they need affirmation. Considering accessory to manslaughter, don't worry, you'll get to keep your gym membership. An Ontario court justice has sent strong message to criminal thugs all across the province who might find themselves in a scenario where they could help a friend evade justice. Go ahead. You won't necessarily go to jail. In fact, you might be able to keep your gym membership. In July 2023, in the Leslieville area of Toronto, Khalila Mohammed helped a man involved in a fatal shooting of a bystander escape the scene and hide out from authorities. Miss Mohammed, who was 23 years old at the time, worked as a harm reduction worker at a supervised consumption site near where the daytime shooting took place, Carolina Hubner Muckrat, a mother of two who had lived in the area, was hit and killed by a stray bullet. Yeah. So Canada's justice system, again, where, life means nothing. Life means nothing to them. And that's how communists and Marxists get ahead. If life means nothing, then the dogma means more, which means that, got to protect the people because they were doing the right thing. They planned to do the right thing. They didn't mean to help a criminal evade justice. Joy Reid campaigns for Iran to get nuclear energy in cringeworthy panel appearance. Oh boy. Fired ex-MSNBC Joy Reid mistakenly blasted the U.S. for trying to stop Iran obtaining nuclear energy during her latest CNN appearance. Speaking on Newsnight earlier this week, Reid defended the country following the attacks on their nuclear sites by President Donald Trump over the weekend. The left-wing commentator said, "Why on earth is the United States bombing a country that did not attack us? What on earth are we doing there at all?" Yeah, I got to play this clip, but I think I probably drop a few IQ points just listening to her. This whole fiasco has been played over and over again, and I think Crowder had pretty did a pretty good assessment of what happened as to people getting this entire thing wrong from the start. And if you watch it, there was actually a good interview between Viva Frey and Crowder up yesterday where they cover this rather effectively and how it's important to stick to the facts. Oh, we're at the end of the storyline. All right. Well, thanks for coming out today. If you've actually listened all the way to the end, I really appreciate you guys being here. Please give us a like if you're on YouTube. If you're on Rumble, please give us a follow. Need the followers and thumbs up there as well. It's been great. We'll see you next week. You guys have a great weekend. Oh, and have a happy Canada Day if you can find a town that actually celebrates it anymore. Bye bye.